We are absolutely blessed to have Marissa on and have this conversation together. She shares how emotional intelligence has completely changed her parenting and why so many neurodivergent kids are missed, dismissed, or even punished in schools simply for being themselves. In the conversation, we also dive into things like this lens shift that parents and teachers need to truly support neurodivergent kids. Hello, Dr. Ross Greene. We both absolutely love him and his work. Why the mainstream school system often fails kids emotionally and academically. Why so many parents are turning to homeschooling and whether or not it could be right for you. And PDA, sometimes called pathological demand avoidance, but we like to frame it as persistent drive for autonomy, what it is and how to parent a PDA kiddo. This conversation is packed with insights and eye-openers, and of course emotional intelligence is at the heart of it all. Whether you're a parent or a teacher or just someone who wants to understand neurodiversity a little bit better, you need this conversation in your life. Just in case you're new here, welcome to the podcast. I'm Stephanie Pinto, your host, and I'm an Aussie mum of two and an award-winning emotional intelligence coach, obviously a podcaster, an international speaker, and a best-selling author. So basically anything and everything to do with emotional intelligence, I love it. And I do want to say, although we are far from perfect as parents, because our kids still have big emotions and sometimes they get the best of us too, our meltdowns for us and our kids are few and far between, and when they do happen, we know how to handle them and we get through the other side and we get on with our day and we're a close, connected family. So I cannot tell you how powerful and empowering emotional intelligence is when you infuse it into your family. And also, I always want to acknowledge the Darug Nation because they are the traditional custodians of the land on which I live, work, and record this podcast. I pay my respects to all First Nations people, their elders and ancestors, and I acknowledge that sovereignty was never ceded, and I stand in solidarity towards a shared future. I know you're going to love Marissa and her brain and her big, big heart just as much as I do. If you're ready to rethink what is possible for your child, then let's go. Okay, hi Marissa, how are you?
I'm good. How are you today?
I am good. We made it through the storm that just happened at both of our places, I think, an hour or two ago. So we made it through
Well,
with
ours
ease.
hasn't hit yet, so it'd be interesting to see if it comes up.
Oh, okay. I
It
assume.
might be coming up from your way.
Yeah, I apologize in advance for that. Yeah, it cleared here and it did leak a tiny bit in our lounge room. So I'm going to have to go figure that out after we jump off. But anyway, for the time being, that's for future Steph to worry about. So, okay, let's jump in with a bit about your background and obviously with emotional intelligence that you're a big advocate for. Kind of tell us a bit about that with your 5 kids. So, yeah, start us off with that.
Okay, so my family hit a crisis point around 2018, 2019. I had 3 children crash in the mainstream education system with no real understanding of what was happening, why it was happening. Um, and it was like a domino effect. Once one child had their burnout, it flowed into the next child and then into the next child, and we were just scrambling to try and figure out what on earth was happening. At the same time, I had 2 younger children, so a 3-year-old and a 1-year-old. My 3-year-old ended up going through a full developmental regression. Um, Obviously with everything happening at the same time, it was just a madhouse trying to get supports in place, trying to figure out what was going on with school. We got a 3-year-old in to see a pediatrician, and they were the first of our family to be diagnosed autistic. And then knowing your background in speech pathology, I'm sure you're aware, you go through a whole series of developmental questions when you're seeing different therapists. And through those questions, everything started kind of going off in my head. Like, just all these things are just dinging in my head, going, oh my God, that makes so much sense. Yes, that makes so much sense, because you have to go through every nitty-gritty bit of development. And so that led to me understanding my older children, what they were actually experiencing was autistic burnout. I just had to go through the process of formal diagnosis. And then when COVID hit, and everything, we all went into lockdown and supports ended up moving to the online space. It really felt isolating because you just started to get help and support, and then it all just stopped. By that stage, we were all home educating our kids because we didn't have a choice at that stage. And then I just started doing a deep dive into everything about autism, neurodivergence, and trying to figure out how I can help my family. Eventually, I stumbled onto you in your group doing a live and started listening to you talk about emotional intelligence. And that's when it kind of, like a bomb kind of went off inside my head. Like, how did I not know this existed? Um, I was a 40-ish-year-old woman who had no idea what real emotional regulation was or what real emotional intelligence was. And, and then through therapy, everyone says, oh, you've got to teach your kids emotional regulation. And I'm like, but now I'm learning I don't know what emotional regulation is because I don't have it.
I know.
I don't know what it is. Like, and then it's almost like your world kind of comes to a bit of a stop because you're just like, how can I be this old and not understand this? Like, how is that even possible in this world, in this life?
Oh my God.
And then obviously, I started learning a lot more from your group, started doing your master classes, then eventually upgraded to your courses. And now I just get it and I talk about it a lot and it's really difficult. I don't envy the space that you're in, because it is really, really hard to educate it when you're up against people who are like me, like how did I not know? So how do you come across other people who feel like they've got it all figured out because you've just lived 40 years of your life, but then to say, well, actually, you really don't know at all.
Yeah. Oh my God. Okay. I'm just going to stop you there because I feel like there are going to be so many people listening to this going, oh my God, that's me. Like, not maybe not all the specifics and all the, nooks and crannies, but like even me, I was like, that was me. I was like, how did I not know about this? What is this emotional intelligence? And I remember thinking, um, like, why are people talking about this and what is it? And also, how have I not heard about this till now? And I discovered it online too. A friend of a friend was doing, like, posting about it and doing it in her for corporate actually, so not in the parenting space. And yeah, like we have many similarities in that aspect where I think we were just like the whole world stopped, and then I was like, oh my God, I had zero, like I was, yeah, the world's most emotionally unintelligent person.
Yeah, and it's really difficult too because not only are you supposed to be trying to help your children through their most difficult moments, you're also in a space where you're just like, how do I get through my most difficult moments then? What am I supposed to do? How am I supposed to take care of my kids when I can't even take care of my own emotions and my own thoughts and my own feelings, and we're all just spiraling out of control?
Yeah.
And then yeah, so it was a lot of deep work.
Mm.
Um,
And it's ongoing, right? For you and for me, like I am still learning and I still have moments where I'm like, whoa, should I handle that better? Like,
well, yeah, just before we started recording, I said that I discovered you specifically on the 25th of March, 2022. So yeah, it's been every single day from that moment onwards, constant work, constant understanding, unlearning, relearning, and it doesn't stop. It's every day.
mm,
And because we're human, we're not perfect beings, which means we're going to make mistakes and we have to catch them. We don't have to feel guilt about it, but we do have to catch them and go, okay, I could have done that better. Now what? And then on
yeah,
goes with the repair and so
yeah.
on. So
Mm.
it's every day, every moment, everything that you do. It's enormous, and it still blows my mind that we're not learning this. Like, well, we're not teaching kids about it. We're not learning about it. We're not educating people about it. You're just stumbling across it because you need answers to your life.
Yeah, stumbling, good word. Okay, so you have five neurodivergent kids, and I'm so glad there is so much that we could talk about and so much that I could ask you to share. And was it before we hit record? I think it was when I was like, let's see if we can keep to 30 minutes, and if not, you'll come back.
Yeah.
But
Yes.
especially because you mentioned home educating, just quickly, is home educating different to homeschooling? What's the terminology that you use?
Home education and homeschooling can be used interchangeably. There's no real difference. It just depends on what you prefer to use. So yeah, it
Okay.
just depends on what you prefer.
So, do you think that then it's fair to say that neurodivergent kids are missed and dismissed and often even punished in classrooms simply for being themselves, or, despite doing the best that they can with what they have? What's your opinion on that?
They absolutely are. And I say this from lived experience and from experiences that I've heard from other parents. But I think it's a subject that's complex. So there's no real simple answer to give to anybody. There's no real way forward. We just have to present things as they are, and then each individual has to move through whatever procedure that they've got to move through. But I think it's not just the schooling system, it's the entire world and how we're taught to believe certain things.
Uh-huh.
And if we zoom out, as you always say, if we zoom out, it's that behaviorist lens that we're also familiar with, about being seen and not heard, being good, being compliant, being, all we have this perception, or society has this perception of what it is to be a good human being. And if we don't meet that mark, and that mark can be anywhere depending on an individual's perspective of what good means. So we're all trying to live up to this moralistic value of what good is, when essentially we're all just individual human beings trying to live and trying to do the best we can through life. And then when you are either diagnosed or discover that you are neurodivergent, it adds another layer of complexity to it, because you then have to re-examine your entire life and everything that you've experienced through your life through this different lens, and to understand yourself and to understand how you've experienced things and why it was different to how somebody else experienced something. And then why is it that you that was told that you're doing something wrong, or you're presenting yourself wrong in the world, or you're not communicating better, or you're not empathizing better, or you're not, you know, smiling better, or you're not making better eye contact. It just goes on and on and on and on. And then you're like going, and then obviously, when you get that much put on yourself as an individual, you're then questioning, well, it must be me. And then if you take all of that and put that into a 4, 5, 6-year-old little human being, what on earth are we expecting from that tiny little human being with such an underdeveloped brain?
Mm. Oh my goodness. I love the way that you articulate it, and you're so clear and it makes so much sense. And it's just, I hope that people listening are kind of nodding their head going, that makes a lot of sense. And, you know, whether or not you have neurodivergent brains in your household, I think it's, something that across the board, it's not just in schools. And I'm glad we're not singling out teachers whatsoever, because I think teachers are incredible human beings and under a lot of pressure. But the system and the school, the 30 kids in one classroom, and we all go to the same bells, and we all have to learn maths at the same time. And oh my goodness. So um, what is, tell me what the lens change that we need to have is, because I know you talk about that. You're a huge advocate for it. And, it touches on, well, it draws a lot from Dr. Ross Greene's work, who we both love. But tell us a bit about that lens shift when we're seeing a
Yes.
child who's maybe not doing the right thing or not meeting the expectation. You guys know I don't say misbehaving, but they're not doing what we expect of them. What's that lens shift then?
Well, we could also draw on a little bit of Dr. Vanessa Lapointe, who I just adore as well.
Yes.
Um, because when we look through a lens of child development, the way I've heard her explain it is we don't have to call things misbehavior. We just need to know that they're children with, rightly so, immature brains who are developing in the world. So whether you're neurodivergent or not, it's irrelevant in that sense because we're all developing and we're all developing on our own timeline and we're all understanding things as we're understanding them. You can't force someone to understand something. They will get it when they get it. I didn't know I was going to be in my 40s till I understood what emotional intelligence was. So how do you expect a 4, 5, 6 year old to have that all sorted out and figured out when us adults don't even have it sorted and figured out? It doesn't make sense. Um, but yes, I definitely love Dr. Ross Greene's work. Not because it all sounds great on paper or it reads well. I learnt it, I implemented it in my home with my children who, as I said at the beginning, we all went into burnout. We all had different forms of needs at the time. And when I put his framework into practice, I mean, along the way, it was a lot of other things. So obviously, a lot of emotional intelligence work. Once we started getting into therapy, it was sensory integration work. There was a lot of stuff that sort of went inside each of it. But at the core of it was Dr. Ross's Greene's model, the collaborative and proactive solutions model. What it essentially teaches us is that we all need skills in life. And if we don't have the skills to meet the expectations, we're all going to look bad sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
If you turn up at work one day and you're handed a task and you have no idea what to do with that task, you've never experienced it before, you've never done it before, what are you doing? You're scrambling and you're thinking, oh my God, what am I doing? I have got no clue what's going on. You're putting together a team of experts or whatever to help you learn. And it's the same thing in the home with your family. You're learning every individual child, every individual brain, every individual sensory system, and then how to integrate all that under one roof so you can live harmoniously. And it is big work. It's not small work. It is huge and it takes a long time to learn. Which is why if we go back to the education system, for teachers or for educators today, it would be almost impossible.
Yeah.
What we're asking for teachers, even though schools have a legal responsibility to meet the needs of the children, we're also asking a system that's understaffed, under-resourced, under-experienced, under-trained to meet needs that sometimes we don't even understand that need to be met.
Yeah.
So we kind of need, it really comes from, we have to again zoom it out. It has to start from a societal level. It can't just be a systemic level. We have to first get society to understand it in order to create the systematic changes.
Yep.
There's already some models in the world, like the universal learning design or universal design. I'm sure someone will know what that is. The universal design of learning, and even some of that will have its flaws because of how individualized it will need to be in order to understand someone's needs. Again, I'm 47 now, late diagnosed because all my children have been diagnosed. And I'm learning about myself. I'm learning about my limits and my sensory needs and my executive function. And then, I'm going through this as a human being, let alone trying to handle my 5 children's needs. And then if you put that into a bigger scope, how does then an educator learn for, potentially 30 students
Yeah.
and cater to 30 students and to their individual needs? In some ways, it feels like an impossible task. But if we get people on board and we get people working together rather than against each other, we can definitely make it work.
Yeah.
Um, because the work is already being done and it's already being evidenced.
Mm.
Hence Dr. Ross Greene's model, because it just works. When we get the skills and we build the skills and we acknowledge that sometimes we can't, sometimes we just can't do a thing, and we allow people to have that moment of not being able to do something and just accept it. And it's okay. The world doesn't implode. You know, we can move from that moment and go, okay, we can go into the next moment, and the world is still okay. It's still going. It hasn't stopped. We're
Oh
still living. We're still breathing.
my gosh, I'm just going to let that sit for a little bit because I think there's so many things that you said that were so profound and so valuable, and just the way that you explained, eh, our our teachers have an impossible task when we are all wired differently and learn differently and have different sensory preferences. Like, neurodiversity aside, I just think it's such a hard task for teachers. And there's no, I mean, schools, mainstream mass schooling is convenient because in this day and age, a lot of both parents often have to work, and
Yeah.
it's not always the case that we can do other things, but I could go so many different ways. And I just like, I want to reiterate or, support everything you just said, because again, you said it so eloquently. I'm not going to try and add to it. But what has it meant for you? I want to ask, what has it meant for you home educating your kids? You talked about the autistic burnout. We talked a bit about, really, I think, meeting kids where they're at and honoring their learning system, their learning preferences, sensory systems, and things like that. Maybe just, I see a lot of this is obviously, I'm swirling in my mind thinking, where can I go? There's so many questions, but it has made a huge difference, I think, for you. You may well have saved your kids' lives, sometimes it gets to that point with families and with kids who are struggling. And since the pandemic, we have seen a big shift, right, towards home educating. What has it meant? My question finally is, I guess, what has it meant for you? What has it done for you and your kids, and maybe you as a family as a whole? Because the stresses of kids burning out and trying to push them to school when they experience, anxiety or stress is just intense. So zip.
That's okay. I have we're a family of PDA, so pathological demand avoidance. Some people prefer to call it a persistent drive for autonomy. Whatever your preference is, you're good to go with that. In my world, I've had to do a lot of unlearning. I've had to relearn a lot of knowledge that we now know about development, the brain, neuroception, nervous systems, threat responses, emotional intelligence plays a huge part into that, because when we talk about brain development in the threat response is also the emotional brain. They kind of go hand in hand. You can't have one without the other. They're both existing there at the same time. Um, and when you've got children that are, or even yourself, if you've ever been in burnout, you'll know what it means. Like you know you want to do the thing. That's the thing. Whatever, when I say the thing can be anything. It can be make a cup of coffee. It can be I need to eat. It can be I need to go to the toilet. I need to have a shower. I need to get dressed. It can be just the very basic fundamental things of life, let alone all the big things like learning, schooling, working, all those kinds of things. And when you've got these little brains that are in meltdown or burnout, or you're physically seeing your child shut down in front of you systematically, like they just flop, they drop, there's no words, there's no feelings, there's no emotions, the brain is literally shutting down right in front of you. You're basically sitting there going, oh my God, like, is my child going to die? Because that's exactly what you're thinking, what you're feeling. So I had to do a lot of learning. I think sensory regulation was a huge factor in our world. One that I'm still trying to educate to my children because obviously I've got young kids, I've got older kids. They just live their normal life. They don't understand a lot of things. So again, trying to educate someone on the sensory system is difficult, even for us as adults. Like, I just do things that I do. I don't think about it. I don't think about the why. I just do them. But now we understand. So things like using noise cancelling headphones to help reduce noise so you can concentrate or so you can think. You might have the other way. You might need background noise. You might need low levels of noise in order to do things. Similar for sleep. For a long time I was scared of the dark. And I always just thought, like growing up, I always just thought it was I was scared of monsters. I'm again, I still check for gremlins under my bed, so I'm like that kind of a person who sticks with the fear. Um, but as I've gotten older and I've gotten to understand myself a lot better, I realized no, I actually need light to sleep. I can't sleep in the dark. Sleep doesn't actually click for me in the dark. I need light and I need noise. That's how I fall asleep. That's how my brain feels safe in having that. So I've always got dim lights on in my house. We never not have a light on in the house. Um, so it's learning all those different intricate things about not only yourself, but if you've got one or more children, learning the specific needs for every single nervous system, every single brain, every single sensory system, and then making those adjustments. And then trying to live and work, live together under the same roof, firstly, and then able to do all the other things that we want to do in life.
Oh
And
my
that
gosh,
is really, really hard.
I don't want to interrupt you, but I love how you, and I know you do this online as well because I see lots of your comments and vice versa. I love that you are such a huge advocate for honoring your child's sensory system and they're accommodating their needs and meeting them where they're at and not telling them what they should feel or how they should be behaving or acting. Like that's just even that we talked a bit about unlearning some of these lessons, right? And I don't know about you, but I definitely learned like it's cold, put a jacket on, and you don't like that, you won't eat that. Oh my gosh, you're not. It doesn't hurt. It's a scratch. You're fine. Like we constantly had that invalidation from well-meaning parents, but isn't it such a ongoing lesson or journey to really let go of those beliefs that were, I think, ingrained in us, or the lens, that we see our kids through, and actually, I want to say, yeah, honor, but also trust that they know their body and what works for them and what doesn't. Does that make sense?
Yes, it's very difficult because as a parent, you feel like I can't let go of my control because if I let go of my control, then that means no one's taking care of my child,
Yep.
and then I'm not doing the right thing as a parent.
Mm-hmm.
This is where the work of Dr. Vanessa Lapointe really sort of sticks in, and we have to sort of remember that we have a relationship, that connection, that bond with our kids, um, where we can step back from our role as a parent, the one that makes the rules and the boundaries and all the things, and we just come in to connect with them and build our relationship with our children. Um, and if you're like me, there's many of us that don't always have that, buddy relationship with our parents. So sometimes it can feel a bit foreign to us to really go, well, what do you mean I have to have a relationship with my child? Like, what does that mean? What does that look like? Like, I don't understand this. But it's really just like if you were thinking about a platonic friendship, someone who you get really deeply, you can finish their sentences. You know exactly what they're going to say. You know exactly how they're going to react to something. You don't even have to look at them. You can just send them a text and know exactly what their face is going to look like or how they're going to react. It's that kind of a connection that you have with someone that's so deep that you just get that person. And that's kind of where you are with your kids. Um, More so mothers than dads, but it does happen often with dads too. But when you have a newborn, um, you'll know, like you learn their cries, their individual cries, and you'll learn exactly what that cry means. Like one cry might mean I'm hungry. One grunt might mean no, I've got wind. I need you to help me get it out. One might be no, I'm in pain, and you'll know exactly what cry means, exactly what. And it's that instinct that we need to keep carrying on as our children get older, and just keep that instinct going. And usually that instinct is squashed out of us. Um, and that's really sad, for not only as us as parents, but sad for us as humans, because we often extinguish our own internal instincts that keep us safe in the world. Um, and that's really what this is about. It's about safety. Because when you're in connection with your kids, you get them, you understand how to help them be safe in the world. You understand exactly what they need, what they're thinking, or you can sort of project what they're thinking, and oh my God, yeah, no, my kid wants to do that. How can I make that happen in the safest way possible so they can get the best experience out of life? But I'm making sure that, they're doing it safely. And I think that's the biggest thing, is making sure you've got that connection, that relationship going, because that's how you're going to show up to be your best self and your best parent, to your kids.
Oh my goodness. Okay. We have covered so much, and I just adore the way you see the world and the way you see kids and adults, for that matter, anyone who's human. And I love, the way you've explained everything today, and your own shared personal experience. Like, that lived experience is so valuable. It doesn't have to be exactly the same as people listening. You might find similarities like I did. And for those of you watching on YouTube, I was nodding and smiling and, just, yeah, absolutely found this so refreshing, and could definitely do a whole other several
Yeah, I
episodes.
don't even know if I answered all the questions, but there we go.
There
We
we
got
go.
through it.
Is there like a last, like a takeaway, if parents, or educators listening really enjoyed this conversation and loved everything you're talking about, and the way you see the world and kids and their behavior, and the lens shift we have to make? Is there something that you kind of just want to leave us with, a thought or a takeaway or a nugget or something that you want to, share?
It will come back to Dr. Ross Greene's work, where he will say kids do well if they can. That extends to educators, parents, humans. We all do well when we can. If we're not doing well, there's obviously something going on for us, uh, that's stopping us from being well, and we just have to try to pinpoint what that is. And that can be hard. That's not easy to sit back and go, well, what's stopping me from doing what I want to do in life? And how do I meet that? How do I overcome that? But if we start from the very basics and just really connect with ourselves, connect with the people that are around us, connect with our loved ones, we will start to see things through that empathetic, compassionate lens, rather than the behaviorist, compliance-based, obedience-based lens. We're human beings. We're not animals. We're not, pets. We're humans. We're human beings.
Yep. Thank you so much. This has been such a joy.
Thank you. Thank you for having me on.
Thank you, everyone, so much for joining me and Marissa for this powerful conversation. If today's episode opened your eyes, or maybe gave you that little aha moment, I would love to hear from you. Parenting neurodivergent kiddos isn't always easy, but with emotional intelligence and compassion and the right tools, we can create real change in our homes and in our communities. And also, if you enjoyed this episode, please follow this. Please follow the podcast. Please leave a review. Please share it with another parent who might need to hear this message. I hate asking for likes and follows, but it does make a difference. And the more we spread the word, the more we can help families shift from chaos to connection. And also, just a reminder, you've got this. Even on those days where it really, really feels like you don't and you're absolutely drowning, just keep going, okay? I am cheering you on every step of the way from over here in my little place in Sydney, Australia. And until next time, please take care, keep showing up with that huge heart of yours. Okay, I'll see you guys soon.